Happy day to you, mate. Yeah. Wow. You're always wanting a show that starts off with a big bang. It goes out with a big bang. Yeah. Um, pretty amazing. Um, it's really stopping, of course, anything that's relentless that isn't natural, isn't it? It's amazing, of course, like when you listen to sounds of nature, you always got sounds going in, and like it's more sounds like doom, you know, doom. So the sound going in versus sounds that go out like whoop 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 whoop. Yeah, and so in tension release music, you've got more doom and time that's spent sort of like where sounds are like that versus how much sound have you got in time frame that gets you up. It's shorter. Yeah, that's just more quicker, mate, and basic, and then but taking time to cascade down sort of thing. So pretty much everything sort of really has a signature, like a sound coming from it. And in the study of cymatics, you're putting like very fine particles, dust on a very taut membrane, and then applying a note so that that very taut membrane is vibrating in resonance with the note, and the particles all assemble themselves into a particular shape. So you could have the shape of a butterfly right there, or a fish, or a face, or an organ, or something, you see. And it's a true thing that every organ sort of has its own relative resonance on a radio frequency and this sort of thing. So relentless it is. You could see it until people could learn about live food. They've been tucking into heavy protein, complex carbs, and kicking off a hormone, wrongfully, of course, because we're only monophasic that we eat. It's supposed to be, but when people are just saying, well, they wake up in the morning, rubbing their eyes, and go, "Damn, I've got to just get into something, tuck into something straight away." It's like, what happened? But you were just sleeping. It's like haven't done anything, and all of a sudden, like you've got to eat like crazy. No one's the wiser. Most are like spending a fortune, massive amount of money, and what do you got on the table in the morning? Bacon and eggs, bit of Wheaties floating around, a little bit of, maybe milk from plant-based that's got full of calcium carbonate. And of course, you've got no enzymes or anything just like that. And what about the music that you hear and the sounds? What's the soundtrack that you have at the hospital? Well, shouldn't it be something which, like, what would it be to talk about a bit, like sound that can cause you to be relaxing? So it's amazing. It's a very deep science, life music, and it's one word, and it does describe a type of a music which really is healthy and helping you heal. And so that's something which we could talk a bit about today, because might that not be something that you've really thought about, which you really should? And so music, what happens when you just are not taught nothing? You don't hear anything either. And what would you come up with naturally? You pretty much come up with sort of 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 types of beat. Why? Well, because both sides of your body is getting into the act of it. Versus, oh no, you were taught a 4 beat, and it's just like every time you go 1, 2, 3, 4, it's just only going to be on one side of the body. Wow. That's not too good. But if you, like me, were just wondering about this, and you did see suddenly that 4 hertz is a freeze, and when that comes on, like where the brain is, it means a spike has gone through your brain. 2, you're on stage, you've got internal dialogue. It's going to be the worst thing for you. Why? Well, because you're doing a couple of things at once. You can't. You've got to be doing one thing at a time when you're up on the stage, you see. Yeah? or anywhere. Otherwise, you get kicked off the stage. Why? Well, because you're in your inner dialogue and it's competing for neurology on the outside, and your capacity to be able to keep a train of thought where you are. Obvious. And so it's part of the reason why people go, I wonder if I'm going to be able to be any good up on the stage there. So if somebody's really good, they're talking to you directly. And it's like really group hypnosis, you see. Somebody could be very good at that. And do you have to have material? No. You've got material in front of you as you connect with your audience, you see. So sound, it really does make things better. Oh, yes, it does. It can help you heal up. So what's behind all of this? You see, isn't it better that, a podcast and things just like that have some music behind it? It's sort of more documentary style. It's a little bit more film. You've got a sense of a feeling of a bit more important information spiritually, you see. And so what would you say about 4Bs? Square. And so if you ask people in nature just to come up with something like I said, they're going to come up with a 3, 4, 5, 7 B. Because why? Because it's going to go from one side of your body to the other. It's going to be elliptical. So sound is so important, of course. You ask anyone who's never been through the public full system to go through the scale, they're going to start at A, and they're going to go down the scale to G. And so that's how everybody does it naturally. But if you're just taught at school to do the scale and it's not going down, not coming in, you don't know that. You never thought about that. All you did was do your do-re, and what did you do? You tripped up and took off and fled the scene. You went up the scale. And so now as a little one, what happened to you after you learned to scale that way? You got hurt. Did energy come into the body, or did it go out, 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 out? And so with sound, you could totally hear all things going on well and truly, for sure. So much, it's unbelievable. In our youth, we really often are taking things not in a universal logos manner, but always jumping into frozen stuff, which is personal. And how bad is that? So somebody's not really getting the picture because they're always jumping into something which is making it personal. And it's an interesting thing that you could have music and it's agreeing with you, and it creates agreement. Or you've got music and it's not creating any agreement. It's not even designed to create any agreement. Opposite. So you and I, we could say we know a lot of people that are very illiterate. Why? Well, because you can't follow instruction. Well, you can, but you've got to be good at giving instruction, see? So that gets more imprinted. And honestly, there's a tonal band that lets information come in. These are things which might, the subject of life music, be something very interesting. I play 15 unique, beautiful instruments, including grand piano and things. And I have a favourite, like in piano, which is quite extraordinary, like George Wisdom, and the album Winter is really nice. So they can give you an example of something which is very beautiful. Anyway, so I play the piano a bit more similar style like this itself. I had a stroke when they took my son, and then I just wasn't able to do anything, just only on one side of my body after that for a long time. So anyway, so somebody could have a great mastery where something is, things could go on where you are. What do you do where this is? But mastery is more than just someone really being good with 15 instruments and be good with this, and you could absolutely know how to do a proper trance dance. And you've done things like that, which I did as I toured around the world. Last time I was in Europe, that was one of the major things that I did was trance dance. and teaching people about how is this, where music is itself to cause this. Anyway, um, who's listening could really be interested in this topic of life music. It's really defined and it's more trance-inducing and it's shape-making. It sort of gives you a nice, relaxing feeling inside, you see. And it mimics all the natural sounds that you or I do, like a horse or a cricket or a whale or a bird or anything. In the studies, listening, you notice certain natural characteristics of natural sound, which is made by our species and other species, and how sound gets used behind like a soundtrack, as a soundtrack that can truly promote and bring out more important points about things. So how somebody's really composing things behind and even the podcast itself where sound is, it really is sure where places have simple rules, of course, isn't it? And it's really what you're being taught right now and listening into. And it's things which I've taught at academies here where music is and interesting. Of course, it's what we're going to be talking a bit about is how music impacts emotion and things. How good is that? If interest really is here bringing you home ever more to some great ideas, the podcasts that we're doing are extraordinary, and I'd recommend people look into the whole brain functioning series and eye awareness and things that's like this. So you're getting a bigger picture of the whole kit and caboodle. But life music really enhances brain function. And imagine just for a moment that the drum's going off in the village and suddenly the beat, which there is entrained everything, isn't it? It's like Big Ben. All other clocks, which is totally not even the same as Big Ben, but come to be in alignment with Big Ben. You see? So the confluence where anything is really is supportive, and otherwise life is really taking another turn, and rather than coming within and going forward, which is the right use of the vestibular sense when you're integrated and congruent, you're more associated in life. So the 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 sorts of 13 types of counts and everything is really taken shorter or longer sort of intervals, and it's the space between the beats where you're living, and it's up and down, or it's up for a moment and then takes time to come down, and it takes a bit more time like that. And so what's going on there is it's causing anticipation, you see. Yeah? So really, like words, music is, and unless anybody become aware more, beautiful types of sounds where songs where are wailing types of singing. It's gorgeous from just sound, and it really doesn't disturb or anything take away your trance state, which some music sure does. It's totally designed to take away your capacity to be able to think, which we'll talk about just in a second here. But so if you're tuned more to 432, sort of, and you're starting at the note of A and you're going down to G, and you tune your instruments more this way, and it's more pentatonic, or it's certainly not chromatic or monochromatic per se, because these are all notes that don't really fit properly. Whereas pentatonic scale, sort of every note you play, it anticipates the next note, sort of thing. See, so natural music really is taught. I mean, you can pick up an instrument and really learn how to play if you've got something that's more tuned, more pentatonic, and things like, for instance, a dulcimer, which I could see you could really be good at. And this is one instrument that I was just really mastered like really crazy, was the dulcimer. So you're using scale and you're creating emotion. And so in life music, a major and minor scale, they're used, and you could learn a little bit more about what major and minor scale is, so you become a bit more tone aware versus tone deaf. See, so it creates the emotional response that's proper, and somebody could really use their voice more. So it's more melodic, and it has echolaic qualities. And so echolaic means a voice or a sound that wakes you up or you pay attention, you see. Yeah, and it's typical. It's really got around about a 90 sort of a hertz within there, and it's characteristic of a really attractive voice, basically. So choreographing the shape and the cascadedness of what you do, where you're contrasting information and you're highlighting and sequestering and marshalling bits of that with what you do. And so it's very bright. You see, you've got bright consonants in the sound, and it's really common that in many ceremonies for over 32 years was I did on the road, and then I finished in 2004. It was just non-stop in the use of music to evoke specifics for happiness and joy, and then things. What would I say? But the same thing coming out of my mouth. And so you could look and you could see what's followed that's natural. Maybe not you're not knowing that, but why don't you have this in the background, your music? Why don't you listen into this? I think this topic today is quite extraordinary. So we could start to pay attention just a bit right now to a little bit more of the actual science behind things. And are you going to find this on Google? No. This is called by Google. It is itself giving you its model and how it's been organized, and somebody behind that. And what is that called? It's called pseudoscience. So you can't get that from Google. You've got to get it from inside your brain, in the way you've thought about things. So you've really got a major, and on the other hand, you've got a minor scale, and with dark also dissonant sorts of quality. It's general that you could have used, and you're conveying sadness or melancholy and introspection, and you're doing that ever more with a more minor scale, and how you're using music and sound itself. So, are you going to hear about brain freeze? Brain freeze. Okay. Wherever 4 hertz shows up, you've got brain freeze. Somebody's going to say, oh, wow, I never heard of that. Yeah, that's right. You sure haven't. Did you look into this? Because you could speak from knowledge. And how come Google's not speaking from knowledge? Why? Well, because stuff like our work is shadow banned. What does that mean? It means cystic fibrosis. They gave it a number 222. Now it's got 226. The year passed by. Yeah, 4 or 5 people looked at that. How good is that? And what does that do to you? You see? So have you ever heard that music and sound actually could really heal you up? Well, it's really what we're talking about here. We started out by talking about cymatics. It's one part of the science that's in things. It's got a shape behind the sound that is. You've also got centics. What's centics? It means you've got a characteristic structure, right, which is a physiology. That's right. And so do you have a feeling that love has a characteristic cupping shape? Yes, it does. And do you think sort of anger, for instance, as an emotion, has a characteristic shape? Yes, it does. So one is a cupping, creating, let's love, and the other one is a shearing force. So it's characteristic shape, really, which is sound. And the question really that you could be asking yourself, could anyone tell what's happening, where your brainstem is? And what happens when you go to 4-beat, you see? And you get the, 4-beat, whatever. And it's like emanating from your brainstem. How long for? Wow, long time. Long time. It's entrained. If that's what you've got, can I get 8 overtones out of your brainstem? Yes, I can. Could I get any more out of your brainstem? No, I can't. How? If you can't see a stereogram and pick it out real quick, it means you've lost your functional plasticity to pick out a pattern. Imagine you're with 100 people and it's just 3 there that see everything. The rest of people go, what the hell's gone on? Ever been witness to things like this? Suddenly got to make you wonder, wouldn't it be like, wow, How come that person, these few people, totally got the picture and everybody else really didn't get it? That's right. Things going on like that, but that's probable that we could talk about that in another story. Yet the topic that we have vested in today, sort of really a bit more for your listening, really is the study that's being mentioned, and it's taught ever more where we are, where professional soundtracks are and things like that. Somebody's very interested in this. They are learning how to use the major scale and the foundation, which really is creating sound for healing and whole brain states of functioning to be pleasant. And while ongoing, you can be feeling bliss as your shoulders are relaxed, your tummy is really nice and relaxed, and you've got this beautiful uplifted mood, and you're looking at space between the beats, not the beats. You're feeling the space between the beats. See, that's where you are, not the beats. So somebody's becoming way better at actually choreographing life music, that they're listening to the various things which you would certain want to be part of, like creating anticipation, also states of trance. And you're doing this with interval patterns, okay? So where you're going inward or out. It's like when you're into something, that's nice. It's about interest. And when you're going out, that's right, that's out. Okay. So it's really like stereographics, where if you're looking at a stereogram, you're really looking at picking out a pattern, and so you've got in music and sound, you've got a whole, half, whole, half. This is life music, which is a cheerful sound. Just to give you an example, and so you could use a major third, which you just could hear there, and it's a visiting frame, which is an uptime and open sounding sort of intervals where things are, and then you've got sort of minor thirds also. You see. So life music, like we start to talk about, like you're listening, it's mimicking the crickets, the birds, the whales, horses, all really have, and dogs all have, and cats have notes which they start with and finish. And so, you're always starting from the first or the fifth. You don't do it another way. Why? Well, because so if you're a musician, you know where to start. It's just sort of something very intuitive, but could be something you really studied as well. It should be something you really studied a lot. So if you really study the area, you're devoting your life ever more simple to music, and you're picking everything up about this, or you've got some master, and these are some of the things which you could pick up. So it's really sound and how this impacts your physiology. And like rain on a tin roof is lymphatics, yes? Where woo, 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 is more like a pineal sound, okay? Or it's more a hard sound, okay? And shh is more a in sound, isn't it? Yeah. So you're really starting with the first or the fifth, and you're always finishing with the first or the fifth. And it's just unnatural. Birds, whales, everybody just does that if you study this, you see. So you're anticipating what comes before and after, and otherwise you could really hear something else going on where the voice is. I could pick up so much just from someone's voice, and I can piggyback in there to see your organs and all sorts of things off your voice. So you've got echolocation, see, coming from the voice. And so minor scales really are used in life music, and you come to have a little bit more somberness, a sense of like reflectiveness and this trance space. It's very mysterious evermore that I'm feeling a state you've created. It's the use of the most common minor scale. This, of course, really is the life music of a natural minor, which is an interval of a patterning, you see. So you've got a whole, half, whole, half, whole, Okay. So whole, half, whole, half, whole, whole. You see, it's so it's a more darker, slightly ever more minor third, and you could feel how the notes there, where music or sound is, can cause you to be sort of more uplifted or sort of really left. Wow, energy just was stripped out of me. So it's like being with a cab driver or someone in the past, and they would just scream as they talk to anybody. Scream. And then here's somebody who's unaware of volume control, they have none, and their voice goes through the house, and completely unaware that they should use their voice just to talk to someone right close to them. And so you could see a psychological mutism has gone on where someone completely is not aware of the volume that they're using. It's quite common where teaching disabledness is, and sort of also antisocial sorts of conditioning as well. So you could really see how crafting a wave and surfing on this is ever more a sense of a rhythm and a consonance, and something which is a logical continuous more rather than a sensed dissonance. And how are those two things sort of used to cause your emotion, and using the major third, for instance, or and the minor third with it. So a classic sort of choice where composition is life music, sort of really a study on the use of sound where you're creating emotional depth and how you're creating a sense of longing, and also like your own sense of being disappeared more into the ether. Yeah, how amazing is this? So you really could feel heartbreak also, yes. And what sound would be used ever more for the experience of this naturally? So you'd really feel the science that's behind this, studied, of course, and it's really the minor scale that's classic choice. And so nothing is ever 4-beat or 2-beat, basically ever, because why? It creates limited mind functioning. It only gives you 8 overtones. That's it. And pretty much after that, are you going to be able to see a rose in your road? No. Are you going to be able to pick out a stereo? No, absolutely not. Why? You need at least 13 overtones right there to be able to see a rose. Yes, you do. Not going to happen with 2 or 4-beat. So if you're leasing resonance within your own medulla and brain, which you are, and you use a square wave, which is going on a lot, it has a shearing force and total showers everything out to be equivalent. And so you've got that brain freeze there. Yeah, you've created an emotional depth otherwise, and a longing more, and some sort of heartbreak going on, where a minor scale is a classic choice which you could use, which follows the steps where you are for realizing everything sort of more. And so you've got crest and wave induction, you see. And a good choreographer, she or he totally is using tempo. You've got so many things going on in sound, don't you? You've got rhythm and pitch, you've got tone, you've got intonation, you've got cadence, you've got tempo, which is, the rhythm of the beats together and things. So a feeling that you have, and coming about from hearing and having the physiology of what this is, which is three-dimensional. Sound is three-dimensional. So you're visualizing a sensory motor compellingness where you're being triggered ever more to a state. So like if you've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, you've got elliptical. You've got things which more grouped into threes, and things where your eye is, and it's going to be way better for composition. And so the major song where sound is the feeling of a state of nostalgia, maybe, for instance, that I could be thinking about. And that it's like, while you've got a fast tempo going on and you're taking one out more of their body, aren't you? and pulling people into more visually out of themselves more. So more making a minor key sound, like if you did that, like urgent or chaotic. And so you're listening to the deeper sense of everything about the subject of life music. And it's really how you're ending in a minor progression where a surprise is, for instance, or like using a major chord and it's created in your physiology of a moment of hope, or sound which causes an anticipation of, like from the chord progression, like we talk about, and in the tempo, and you're looking at your feelings where this tempo is influencing some message that you have, and you're able to be getting an emotional impact from the podcasts and things that you're listening to, or music. So chromatic scale, if that was, it's not a natural scale. Pythagoras really messed up pretty bad. And the pentatonic scale really is far much more easier for you to learn how to play music, and you should be getting no lessons needed sorts of things. So it's interesting that someone could truly have a better contribution to a movement like the eclipse movement and our movement that we have, yet where technical terms are like a stress note. If you're interested in sound being used to help heal, have you ever heard about that? No. That's called pseudoscience by whoever's, programmed Google. So it's a technical term, a stress note. Okay? Okay. So it's a prominence of syllables where word is, which is known more as stress note, where that's the primary note that you have, for instance. And it's, if you're examining the sound that's coming, you've got three chambers that sound is made from, and how are you using all of those three chambers? And so for me, I'm listening into what you've said or your voice, and I could tell you straight away what your stress note is. And so meaning this is the primary note where your voice is. It's the primary note where your voice is, and the note that you have most is called the stress note. Okay. Is that science? Yes. So live music you could hear by using that one note. In a moment of time, we're going to teach you just what you could do. But like, start by going down the scale and get rid of this whoop, whoop, whoop inside your body when you get hurt. So now you're going to have kadoomp inside. Energy's coming in more, you see. So to heal you up. So where you're hearing and where you could feel some skipping going on, yeah, or like a slight faultedness, it's typical going to be around the stress note. So somebody could be very tone deaf. Why? Because they only ever sing in their stress note. And they think to themselves, God, I've got the full range and I can make every note. And it's like, God help us, you sure can't. You're only stuck in one note and trying to sing a whole song with one note. And it's always just from the person's stressed note. So voice and sound could be flat, or the voice could really have a beautiful pitch and duration and intensity. And so could you describe things with sound? Is that something that you've investigated? How much of a science could it be that you went to the academy and you learned how to use sound for a soundtrack? Why shouldn't you get involved and interested in this? If you're a musician, but you haven't ever heard anything about this, please. Okay. So what could you be listening to right now? There's just so much that's coming up, but I'm only just going to give you a smidgen. But we're going to do what we can, because it's just a moment of time you're sitting listening, or you might be standing doing stuff listening. How good is that? Put this on in the background whilst you're doing something else, and you're going to have perfect recall for this for at least 6 weeks. Where someone asks you anything, you'll just come out. It's just going to come out of your mouth. You'll be surprised. So what should be the reason why another note that's used is more forceful, or is more unstressed, for instance, or what really is the stress note? And now we've been talking about stress note. What is that? Missing note. Ooh, gee. Two things. Wow. Stress note, missing note. Is that science? Yes, it is. And what does Google call this? Pseudoscience. It's really like Wiki, which I did not want to be on Wiki. Why? Because they're liars. They did not want to put a single thing about anything that I've ever done in my life, like whole brain functioning, or like the eclipse movement, or anything about music, or anything. And I always would make sure that I'd use the word to describe everything I would do, like, for instance, in nutrition. And I've only ever used the words life food. That's it. I have never, ever in my life used another word. I have never used the word gan of a vey or a vey of a gan, ever, because that's just a starchaholic diet, carbitarian. And I'm not into raw flesh. So, I don't do that. You see, I don't do raw food. Why? Because you've got to make it easier to prepare. And why shouldn't you, if you mention what I do, give the definitions that I've done? So what did Wiki do? Bull dust you. So bad, I want to take whatever they had down because they're liars. So bad, okay. So do you know that that's going on? And is it all right with you that some work gets shadow banned? Check it out. See if cystic fibrosis is still at 226 for years, unmoved. Wow. So you've got a stress note, you've got a missing note. Let's get into that one, eh? So forensics, of course, you can listen and hear the voice, and you could use source code where you could come out of whole brain functioning to teach a machine how to detect deceit and truth telling and analyze change where a person's voice is used easily. And you could detect potential deception, and specifically like looking at micro tremor, for instance, like involuntary muscle movements like that happen within a second, and clusters of 4 or 5 sensors that's being used where that's shown in the way where the movement is, and you can analyze this, you see, but also you can analyze all the movements that happen past a second or more. And so where voice is, it's so amazing. It's sort of, you've really got all these things, and your feeling inside is portrayed to the outside. So if you don't tell me that that's not a movement, it sure is. So if you have a movement, you're going to have a sound, and you have sound, you have movement. So in a few minutes, really, of your good use of oscillation, it's possible really to have cleared away what is the missing note, or some suppressed mode, or some suppressed mode, a suppressed mode that would have been under stress. Okay. So a suppressed mode, it portrays stress. Yeah, it does. So where voice is sort of coming more from like a belly, you're going to get more of a note of G. And otherwise, you've got a head voice. Well, you've got a head voice. And so, it's hard to go up there to get a head voice, but like it could be often just a voice only where you are. And how about coming down into the note of G right now, because you're going to have analog sculpting, and this is sculpting the body to access specific states, which is in your whole brain functioning training. So we'll really be talking today a lot about analog sculpting and music and sound, and applying non-verbals where we're talking about this to change state automatically. Or to take you time to get into a trance? No. Why don't you learn things that's automatic? And if you're a stage performer, you have to have automatic types of induction, you see. So if a beloved would have been under stress, the autonomic nervous system activates, which is effective, and you can feel the sensory motor pattern where the speech is. And so controlling vocal cord, you could see wherever somebody goes down the scale, there's a slight skip and miss as you're going from one note to another. And this is called the missing note. Ooh. So you have a stress note and you have a missing note. So you've got movements, of course, you've got macro, larger movements that are more enduring, and you've got tiny, really small involuntary oscillation also, which is felt where the muscle is, which can cause a quiver and a waver, and that shaping of that quiver and waver where flute is, which is really a type of a speaking, and you've got gorgeousness where you've got an angenial sort of scene tremor, where presence is, you've got this under stress, where the sympathetic nervous system would have been part of the ANS. It's often suppressing, being suppressed where stress is. And so it's a resulting changes wherever somebody is. You could hear this where the voice is. So sounds which is rough or hoarse or gravelly or raspy, rather than resonant, is sort of depending upon a state where someone is. And are you aware of this? Well, you should be, because why shouldn't it be that you're putting music forward where you're talking to people? And why isn't it that you're accessing inside everybody else a sort of a nice relaxed state, because your voice is nicely slurred and rolled? And it creates relaxedness, you see, yeah? Otherwise, you've got limited mind function going on. And what does that mean? 8 overtones. And what else? Coming from the amygdala. What's that? The aversive componentry of your brain. And how do you get that? You get this right now from you listening to me, and I have this clip voice on you. And I mean, that's sort of subtle. That was pretty gross, but subtle sorts of versions of this. But you could straight away tell if somebody's in their frontal cortex or they are in their back of the brain, or just like the brain stem only, and not ever getting into their frontal cortex at all. So sound that you make, like we talk about, we've only got so much room we could go into, but you've got 3 chambers that sound is made meditative. And so sounds which is rough, hoarse, gravelly, raspy, going to work where things are too much, because it's going to cause you to have limited brain function. And clipped doesn't work, you see, because the lengths of the thickness of your vocal cords are causing a slower vibration, should be of a more lower pitch. And so fundamental of voice, which is around about a fundamental frequency, is generally like around about 96 hertz or something. Yes, it's a far greater attractive voice. So if your voice comes from your belly, and you've got a voice which is associated at higher levels of testosterone, then you're going to be able to make a deeper, more lower sound. And then, health and maturity really is ever more, because you've got some physical condition. And so where deepness isn't, everyone's talking about like this and said, well, that was all. And so, it's not deep. Some meters where you are is over selling or underselling. And what is relaxing, that's life music, it takes a little bit of a moment for you to go up, but then it's cascading down for some time. And you've got a slow, consistent tempo around about 50 to 60 beats per minute. And so it's really a harmonious melody of a soft, you feel just non-intrusive, feel like a beautiful sort of instrumentation is going on, like where a piano would be, or synthesizing pads and things that's used. And so life music really is a study of a show of a great composition where you're cascading down ever more, and time is taken to go up a little, but it's really very soothing because you're taking time to cascade down, and soothing melody, gentle rhythms, more ambient sound. And so we naturally really have a feeling where you can focus where you are, and you can have some background like this, and it really can help you focus, or versus God help us, no, it's not, because why? It's going to say, I can't get love, or something like this. It's got some codependent words, which is disgusting. Oh my God, it's disgusting. It's like, why do you want to have that codependent bull dust? Oh man, it's horrible in your head because it came from an idiot. So that's okay. It's a major mode and a slow tempo and a medium pitch where flow is and rhythm, and it's a constant harmony. And you're like really feeling ever more a medium in the volume of this, which is a study of brainwave. Where, like in the early '80s, it was for me to totally be investigating this, and anyone that was about to apply or that was inducted could learn what this is and expressed ever more. Where I start to see what's a selective restrictive violation in behaviour. Is that like you're expecting someone's hand to greet yours, where you've put your hand out to greet someone, to hold their hand, to give them a shake somewhat, or something, and you do this and their hand's not there? That's an example of a selective restrictive violation. It's like you've used your logic in a way that is not logical, so that you're just leaving behind selective restrictive violations in people, which is a characteristic of a systematic process of two waves. One interruptive, the other interpret. And that's what passes through you or anyone who's got internal dialogue on stage. And is that going to be shown? Yes, it is, but we want you off the stage as quick as we can because you're crazy. You're just not with it. And we'll clap you when you're going off because we love it that you got up there. But ding, 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 get off the stage quick. Now, most people are boring. Why? Because the content sorters, it's name, place, time, name, place, time, name, place, time. God help us, yawn, yawn, yawn. It's technicality yawn. No structure whatsoever. And this is the reason why most people do not want to talk to their family members. It's boring. Who's talking? No structure. Typical. Okay. Because can you stick to just one thing? Like, what would be the reason why you would want to be able to predict a brain freeze? And is that something useful? Yeah, but like, don't keep going along with brain freeze nonstop, uninterrupted. It's an inactive state that's been over you just by 4 and 2 beat. And so how about we just get off that 4 beat and 2 beat? What would be the reason why you continuously want to play that crap? Honest to God, it's disgusting and wrong, and it's a war beat, okay? And it's war beat, that's it. And so is that the reason why you can't hear anything about this? I'm not sure. But if you're paying attention to your inner dialogue and you stop all of that, how good is that? You could lose your train of thought otherwise, where your audience is, and they could sure feel your hesitation. Of course. So how about having confidence and not all this sense lack? And do you don't think that music could help you have this? Yes, it can. So we've just been talking how Google is so wrong, and whoever's doing the machine code has screwed up so bad. It's like really bad. Why? Because it's just like you're being fed something now versus like you're looking for yourself. Wrong information, most. And so this work has been shadow banned since 2016. See? And so, whatever information it's about whole brain functioning, about life, food, nutrition, it's about economic egalitarianism, it's about gender egalitarianism. There's so much there. It's incredible. Life, food, agrarianism. It's stuffed because it's shadow banned. And so, like, a group certainly killed Galileo. Are these people still going on? Yeah. Yeah, but Galileo, he was an innocent bloke. And what would you be wanting to be involved in that? And so, has anybody had a claim about it? Okay, so, well, where something is expressed, it is, and before it is, it's not. And so something is a strange attractor that everybody's drawn to, which is really the feast we all have And that's all our togetherness. And it's in unity conscious, not frozen logos. So you start to really learn ever more what's empirical, clinical, that's observed, and you've got a valid construct and context behind what you're saying. And so who's programmed Google as to not work whatsoever? So why shouldn't it be that you would learn whole brain functioning? What would be a reason why you've never heard about cystic fibrosis? You don't even know what it is. You reckon it's rare. And what about sexually rigged? Why don't you know that your agenda may but not be your gender? It may not be your sex. And these have got nothing to do with what you're attracted to or not. Get over all this if you've never studied any of it. You're a bulldust artist. How about you pick up a copy of Sexually Rigged? That would be really good for you. It's one of the most important books that people have told me they've ever read. So how is blood formed? Why don't you know what I've said about blood formation, which I'm correcting, the crazy, stupid things that's being said at the moment. That comes from someone, yawn, from 1925, Doan, Cunningham and Sabin. Did you know that? No, you didn't. If I ask you right now, where's the DNA in your body? Put up your hand. So I'm going to ask you to tell us. I say, okay, nobody puts their hand up. How is enzymes transported in your body? Tell me right now. Put your hand up. Nobody puts their hand up. Like, simple things. All right. What's a natural birth? Put your hand up. Everybody starts laughing at this point because nobody's putting their hand up. We're in a room full of idiots, honest people with, Dunning-Kruger. So good with Dunning-Kruger. Whoa. And so it's a science, really, and you're given to be lied. So crazy. And how about stop shadow banning people's stuff? And who gave you permission to have harm, injury, cost, and damage to all this movement? Why? And what does it do where somebody looks at cystic fibrosis and go, yawn, 226 people. Wow, it used to be 222. So I guess 4 people maybe just listened to this in the last year. How good is that? It's like, don't even bother looking at it. Why? Well, the number hasn't moved. Why would you want to? Maybe that's the very reason you want to look at something. When the number hasn't moved, obviously it's some brain freeze predictor, isn't it? And something happens particularly where that's going on, it's an interruptive spike, like I'm talking about. And so where you're hearing all of this, you could be really listening to podcasts that we've done, and there are so many. Like we've got a couple, 2.5 million just have come to Luke's programs and things that he's recorded and everything there on this work. And so how do you define a selective restrictive violation? Is that just something which you're doing which is not logical and your neighbour would absolutely feel the same? Yes. So wherever somebody applies selective restrictive violations, it could be like, I don't have any idea what you're saying, and that's all that person will say. Or the legal system doesn't agree with you. It's like, wow. What would somebody want to just say things just like that? Because why? Because it's selective restrictive violation, and it's actually done to shut somebody down. It's a control freak sort of acting, and that's the only thing that somebody learned how to do, which is control freak stuff, which is violent, and that's dissociating, that's distracting, that's interrogating and causing people's model to feel smaller, and that's intimidating. Like, if you don't do this, watch out. And so, did somebody want to be the victim inside that? No, they wanted to be the victor. And so they're going to follow the victor's behaviour, not the victim's behaviour. Okay, so sounds are all sexually rigged, truly disastrous, and like where you say something is not formed properly, you wouldn't call that malformed, would you? No, that wouldn't be right. If somebody's going to be put into to be punished, you wouldn't call it to be clitoralized, would you? No, that would be wrong, wouldn't it? You wouldn't want that, would you? So stop calling it penalized. So listen to sound, God help us, will you? And wake up a bit more. Do you have control over your volume? Because I've been talking about that. That's a good one. You should just be talking to people right where you are. How good is that? Now you're going to have more exceptional brain function. So we've gone over a few things like we've just said, Wiki is so bad, it's just wrong, and who controls that? Same people. It's the criminal banking cartel of a one world order. And so bad, deleted information, how good would that be? What's corrupt? And Google monopolizing. What you're going to say, that's not a monopoly? Bull dust. You're going to say monopoly is okay? No, it's not. Never has been. It never would be. It's not. A monopoly is weird. And you got an example of a monopoly? Sure, there's too much. It's like one hand, paints it, one color, and everywhere the same. Don't tell me that's not a monopoly. A criminal banking cartel of a one world order, and it's complex. Did you select the social compact? No, because if you did, it's a republic at peace, isn't it? And that's what all Americans have told me and other people around the world. So it's not to be crazy lacked in science itself, because a JC quantum is the smallest pixelated dot in space. And why can't you have not heard about that? Shadow band. And so this is really like if I asked, like I saw, there was no order to reorder my book if it came into a bookstore. Is that okay? No, it's not. You see, because what's the reason behind all of that? That suddenly you're just shadow banned, you're put to be under some tree. And so applying your nerve force where anything is, it's really a work which has volume and magnicity. There's a great volume that's about exceptional brain function. So Wiki's so bad, it's so wrong, it couldn't even absolutely say anything that was ever written anywhere, like any papers or anything and things just like that. No. It had stupid stuff. And when you went to correct that, it was, I could see corrupt, and people told me it's really corrupt. And so what would be a reason for someone to use GoDaddy and put stupid stuff on GoDaddy about me for years and years and years? And who paid for that? And so monopoly is controlled by a criminal bank cartel of a one world order. Google sure is monopolized and crazy, lacked science inside that, and of no breakfast cereal because it's not right, really, most of it. So it's organized where you have a nervous system for sure, but shadow banning my work and time is criminal. And to you or anybody else, where the movement is to criminals to redact what's has science, and then it could be said where that is, and something is no science. But it's very lowball, and most of all of that is sort of very slippery slope that somebody's be asked to not have any fact behind and then go along with something, or hey, no, everybody goes along with this. This is bandwagon appeal, and so for reasons. It's just a hive where anything is. You've got a Google brain, and the criminal banking cartel of a one world order, it's very clear, has monopolized the information. And so that's the reason why my books would have, don't order this, don't restock this book. So it explains things. Most are lied to. and they have just a bit lived for what makes sense, yet it's typed ever more, and what lies get there, it's really read, but helping where any sick is. And so if you've been educated about brain freeze, which I have since the late 70s, it's really, I spent a lot of time looking into this and beyond. And there's some science and things that's ever more done that relate to what this is, but it's about a construct. It's about face validity. It's about contextual validity, and it can be repeated, so it's reliable. So the eclipse movement is getting rid of usury. It's a movement and a currency. It's a usury-less currency. So why would Wiki want to just lie, and never want to change anything where people put information in 219? So that's when we took that down. We better that you take something down than leave crap up, and absolutely be okay about running with some criminal organization. No. So it's a matter of fact that validity is... Could you tell me what something valid is? Well, should you have studied what validity is and you could define it? What about reliability? What's reliable? So you're valid in what you say, what you do, and you have some reliability about it as well. So this really describes my work for sure. I didn't need any wolf per se, but what's single and bit. It's really that I saw clearly how 4 time and 4 beat, like resonance of a Hertz oscillation, predicted brain freeze and the onset of a various events, which is those 2 spikes, which run through most people's sensory motor complex, no matter what, and interrupts that complex. Yes, it does. So those 2 spikes are interrupted brain spikes. You're going to say that doesn't exist? Yes, it does. And so you're going to talk about how the transformation is, where some offset is to synchronize some prefrontal conditioning so that it's neurologically inhibits the amygdala circuits, which whole brain functioning does. So the septal region neurologically inhibits the amygdala circuit, so pleasure neurologically inhibits aversion, and vice versa. So are you going to say nobody knows anything about this when the Yellow Book of the Yellow Emperor's book there in Asia, written around about 500 BC, has all the information like what I'm just sharing with you? The optogenic induction of your nerve and the use of square beat, square time, and the period of that where some distinction is, and it's given to you a long time ago. And is it going to cause you only to have 8 hertz cycle out of your brainstem? Yes, it is. And you're going to be able to see a rose after that? No, you're not. It's like you've got a broken knee, and how am I going to ask you to run 100 meters? So if you could tell me whatever interaction is where some subject is, there's a lifetime work educating you evermore. And it's the things could you not have heard about that's on the cutting edge, or how blood is formed, for instance, and how red blood corpuscles got potency. So you could come about from no such thing as mitotic cell division. That's right. Your cells didn't come from mitotic cell division. And Darwin is so up the puck. There was plagiarized a lot of stuff. So it's no such thing as anything except involution. Evolution doesn't exist. And before any emotion is incurred, you've got a precognitive meaning imprinted, and it's below evermore. Long before you've decided something, you've got a random phoneme generator that's just right there, that's skimming everything below and picked up what's imported, that's weighted, and brought this into what you've said. And so you're interpreting what some grand unified totality is, which is called gut, and it's a quanta of emotion that's measurable. And did anyone measure behavior beforehand? No, they really didn't, because they didn't know about a test operate, test exit, which is a chunk of behavior. So how could you count anything if you didn't know how to chunk behavior? So behavior that's counted and before that it wasn't and couldn't, and who had anything to say about that, you see? And this is the neurobehavior physiology that comes to be welded, which I welded together in a degree a long time ago. So it's specific that physical arousal, where physiological response is, a cognitive label could have been like interpreting the arousal, and it's based on an environmental sort of context. And yet it's accurate because you're applying three variables. You're tracking an emotion, and so you pretty much can understand what the emotion is congruently if you've got three variables that's looking at the emotion. And so situations where emotion triggers a physiological state and response, and like a racing heart, yes, an individual uses sort of cues where that is to sort of in the environment to have labelled and have some anchor for some physiological response or some arousal. So it's a second wave then that passes through. That's a predictive wave. Oh, gee, how do I respond to this? That's a spike, and that is a changed differential relation to resonance, you see. And so it ultimately leading you more to an experience of more of emotion. And this is taking you to where you've not seen before. It's taking you to what you haven't heard before. It's taking you to where you've not felt. And so if you're in a state specificness that's behind memory, learning, and behavior, where whole brain functioning is, you can really see how the physical arousal is a key component, really. And then it's undifferentiated general physiological arousal, you can see similar patterns going on universal across different emotion. And so, beloved, where you are, could be seeking out external cues to understand a cause of arousal, yet it's sort of looking through a lens of whole body calibration that's being taught to you more that this is something from inside out. And so it's achieving a state that's below the random phoneme generator, that's more associated, congruent, and integrated. And so the label, wherever a situation is based, you've got environmental cues that anchor, that triggered automatics. And so accessing cues could be used to go and to draw upon information that's beyond your present sensory awareness. And so typically people will go through a series of accessing cues to access that information. And so how progressive and logical, how coherent it is, and what is it that this is leading you to ever more, where you're able to identify your experience, and you're able to tell me what some emotion is, and you could have a list of 15 unique emotions right now and stop just only having two maybe or something, or even only one, and thinking that everything is those two or one, which it's not. So what's profit evermore like is a mode of a wellspring of information inside you that imprints evermore, where the vestibular sense is, so as you've got something within you, you're moving toward, and you're using direction with the vestibular sense more this way, so you're associated. So whole brain functioning, I've always taught 78% of your nervous system has to be behind something, and then it gets passed on. So 22% could be against it, and it still gets passed on. So, but if it's 23, that's it. It's not getting passed on. So inhibiting aversive centers is what goes on where the pleasure neurology is, and vice versa. So do you have a feeling that it's better that I could leave a message evermore that's, hi, how you doing? Thank you, you're really doing a great job. Or, bugger you. I mean, what's somebody want to do? You're going to see I'm giving you my model of the world as everybody else is every time they open their mouth. So aversive emotion is precognitive, meaning it's before you're even thinking. You've got something programmed that is a conscious reflex, which is many seconds long before you become conscious of a choice that you've made. So, it's really amazing. Sound comes to us into our body. It's three-dimensional. Sessions on the topic really of hypnosis, and these are sorts of things which is very interesting. How does sound ever be used for that? But music is a beautiful change of state, and I think I've really taught most about LifeMusic and how it relaxes, how it sort of slows down and comes to allow you to be able to contemplate and recall information more proficiently. It makes material that's going in where it's more formatted, triggering ever more a release of brain chemicals like dopamine and serotonin and acetylcholine, for instance. So activating the limbic system and triggering pleasure and interest, so you've got whole brain functioning. Otherwise, we've just been saying how rap is just accessing a state of aversion, and 4 beat 4 time, 2 beat 2 time. It just chases something square and odd, and you don't really have your proper functional plasticity to be able to pick up a pattern out of a JC quanta. So patterns where information is, you could see controlling emotion as well. And whole brain functioning teaches us ever more that memory, learning, and behavior is very state specific. And so from joy and compassion, you have, because, wow, you've got the skill to cause your mind to fall quiet. And so that does cause bliss to be. Otherwise, sadness, who's there that's turned themselves on and off? The compassion of sadness and pride and things, and how much is due to what's being released, ever more transmitter and hormone and influencing emotion. So behavior creates neurotransmitter. Behavior creates all sorts of stress substances or not, or opiates. And so calming music, a slow, steady rhythm, really reducing a physiological stress that anybody has, and so lowering your heart rate. And so what happens was a focus is ever more on a good brain function. It's what you're picking up, and a felt response or a sticky factor to what works and is better for you. And so information that's called polarizing is a don't want, can't you, try, but must only, never, always, and clip type of language, and aversive. So here's somebody who only left things to the last moment and learned things under stress, so their memory retrieval in the test became state specific with anxiety. And after that, anybody's looking for, I don't understand. And that's their model. And so whole brain functioning is focus on what you get agreement, focus on getting agreement with condition, but focus on having an insight and understanding, and focus on getting agreement versus I don't have agreement. Oh, it's nice, at least it's about agreement. That's nice. So if somebody's responsible in their home, they've really learned, like I just said, perhaps things that was under stress, and memory retrieval became state-specific with anxiety. And so could you wake up to where that is and change it? Well, you can if you should. You wisely would. If trouble was at home, should that be not added in? So, you've got proper grammar and you've got every single word has a physiology, because where aversion would have been wired through the ages and nobody ever stubbornly didn't like that. They sure didn't like it. It's you and not knowing how things could be done ever more. And how about getting a handle on things today? Because you can have two other ways of responding. You can respond by congruent. You can respond with congruent by congruent, having condition, and you can just polarize no. So the first two are going to get you something, and the last one's not going to get you too much of anything. So what makes sense is conditions where both are sorting information and you're getting agreement more, rather than polarized versions that's triggered limited mind function and triggered the amygdala that shuts your frontal cortex down in the past. So if you've been looking at life music like what we had our show about today, it's sort of really life music, which is attention relief. It emphasizes embellishing where a message is. So music like life music could be decreasing stress and causing less anxiety, improving your memory and your mental alertness. And so if you're going along with life music is setting up an analog which is a sculptedness more to increase your mental focus. And so you're going to not say you don't know music calms a baby and music can calm distressed children and animals, even insects. So how about learning a bit more about Jubb cell rejuvenation? Why don't you focus right now on the value of music and how effective this is significantly in influencing your emotion and memory and certain skill of coordination and things like this. And so life music changes the way you're processing information. But what if you're just in a hospital background and all you hear is, might not be sound that you care for too much, but what if you heard the sound of rain or the sound of water, or like a waterfall? How beautiful. And so music training causes us to be able to have a better environment and functional change, which really causes whole brain patterning. So life music really lights up ever more your brain and hippocampus and septal region, which activates the faculty to inspire creative influence of the future, like we talked about. And so could you think if you were upset? No. Could other people think if you upset them? No, generally. And what's the cognitive read where you are? Is it all right for you to be in aversion? No, because you're not going to have whole brain pending. Is that an alert moreness to the focus on agreement where your nativity is in agreement? Yes. And so should music be supportive of this? Of course. Whole brain functioning evermore is a septal region that's active from interest and pleasure, and it neurologically inhibits the aversive componentry of the amygdala function. You can't have pleasure at the same time as you're feeling really miffed, because pleasure neurologically inhibits aversion. You've got a large enough restore state, you can collapse any stuck state into that. So frontal cortex is drowning off and out where somebody's annoyed, they're not having any implicated whatsoever in interest in what this work is. I made an instrument. It took me 19 years of postgraduate research to do it, and I finished in 1999. It's called Jubb's instrument, and it can determine you could learn how to use this whole brain functioning and how the degree to which somebody's coming more from whole brain functioning. So energy really, Lukey, and to our audience, is really coming into your body and it's healing you, and sound too. It's really natural and information, and you to go down the scale rather than being brainwashed of what would be left with the effect of C.V. Cower, like a shark going up the scale, so energy just never went out of you when anything happened, you see. Have you ever thought about things like this? I think it's time we started to. Energy's coming in, good, it can heal you. Energy's just gone out, how's that going to help you? And it's a natural cascading that comes in and comes down, comes within you and lights up your brain and lights up the hippocampus, the septal region, your frontal cortex, and your connection from the front to the back and left, right. You have a great orientation and you're activating your emotional response to music and having proper memory, you see. So life music, if we just recap what this is just a bit, it's the study that's defined, it's a noun, it's a real noun, one word, life music, it's not two words. And where we are, you could be the first behind all this. Like my big computer got stolen from me, a woman took it, said that she was given that by someone else, and this was me getting burglarized last year. So I got a lot of music on that computer, but it's been stolen, and I'm just like figuring out how to get that back. And even know the person who stole it. Yeah, so I'd wish that it could get back to me. But anyway, Luke, you're amazing. You're on these recordings. Everybody that's coming in and listening, how good is this? And I think how good is it that you've been listening to what whole brain functioning is, what eye awareness is, and today this program all really about life music and how do you get ever more whole brain patterning and use music itself, and how does this impact whole brain functioning? Anyway, most people have only 8 overtone. If you have, of course, availed yourself to quickly look at one of those pictograms, and so you can pick out the pattern from it. Can you? It would be wise that you go ahead and have a look, because a younger brain, quick, smart can, and the older brain over time can no longer have any functional plasticity much at all. So very, very rigid, very hard-lined, only interpreting things one way often, it would be better for all of us to be a lot more whole brain functioned. But you maybe and others never really heard much about this, but most people are subjecting others to stuff which is just horrendous, and no one is really thinking about any of that. But in particular, I can't stand all the codependent love songs. Personally, they make me sick. It's like I've got to do what I can to just not have anything inside, which that's the best. So you hear stuff which is off the chart, and it just goes through nothing, because you've got eye awareness where you are, you've got like space inside. And you have to get used to having an environment which others might be not too caring about that environment at all, and just become good at knowing what really is good. But like, how do you cause something like that to come to be? Where you live in a house where others are, you could constantly and never not be always woken up by people who are completely unconscious, totally, and like, just to have quiet, to let someone sleep. No, they're going to make as much noise as they can. And why? Because they don't even know they're making noise. They don't even care you're asleep. It's not part of their consciousness, you see. And so we have to forgive, and not necessarily just not presuppose that maybe a little bit of time needs to be for you to, be able to get a message across or something. Yeah. Anyway, I love you, mate, and I think we've done a great program today. I'm looking forward to catching up to you in a future show, mate. Love you, mate.